Hello, this is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College with Part 2 for 152, 153, Mobile Web Development, iOS or iPhone. We left off on about page 108. We've started to build our project, and you can see it here. There it is right now, the way it looks. And we will be adding to it, of course, in this one. But as they mention here on page 108, it says, and I'm don't like to read, but I'm going to go over some of this because it is important. It says we need to adjust some constraints for the layout. When you drag a view into another view in Interface Builder, which is what we just did, Xcode doesn't create any constraints for it automatically. We've already gone through this a little bit. The layout system requires a complete set of constraints, so when it's time to compile your app, Xcode will make a set of default constraints describing the layout. The constraints that are created depend on each object's position within its superview. So in other words, if you've got a view within a view and you've got controls within that subview, okay, those controls will depend on how the actual subview that they're in is positioned. So it says to complicate matters even further, Xcode may also apply some automatic constraints, pinning each object to one of its sibling objects within the same superview. This may or may not be what you want, so normally, as it says, you're better off creating a complete set of constraints within Interface Builder before your app is compiled. And in the last two chapters, you've seen some examples of that. So it says, let's start poking around at what we've seen so far. To see all the constraints that are in play, try for a particular view, select the view, and open the size inspector. So, for example, if we select the view here, the entire view, all right, and we open up the size inspector, okay, doesn't show me very much, but if I go down to view here, okay, it shows you the horizontal, the vertical, etc. So it shows you some of the stuff that's in there, and that's the one I actually wanted anyway. All right. Says if you select any of the labels, text fields, or slider, you'll see that the size inspector shows a message claiming there are no constraints for the selected view. In fact, this GUI that we've been building has only one constraint, the one that we applied earlier. All right, it says binding the horizontal centers of the image view and the container view. Okay. What we really want is mentioned right here. It says what we really want is a full set of constraints to tell the system precisely how to handle our views and controls. Fortunately, this is pretty simple. Select all the views and the controls by click dragging a box around them from inside of the upper left-hand corner. It says if you start dragging and find that the view starts moving, release the mouse, move it a little bit further inside of the view and try it again. When all items are selected, use the menu to execute Editor, Resolve, Auto Layout Issues, Add Missing Constraints. Now, to me, that's kind of a cheesy way to do this, but we're going to try it and see what happens. So everything is now highlighted, as they mentioned. So as they say here, I want to go in and do an Edit, Resolve Layout, Edit, Editor, Resolve Auto Layout Issues, Add Missing Constraints. So, Editor, Resolve Auto Layout Issues, Add Missing Constraints. All right. Now, supposedly, some stuff has been added. You can see the stuff here and how it's blue, etc. When I clicked over there, hopefully you saw that. After doing that, it says you'll see that all the views and controls have some blue sticks, which is very quickly what you saw before I clicked on it. Each of these sticks represents a constraint. The big advantage to creating these, instead of letting Xcode create them at compile time, is that we now have a chance to modify each constraint if and as we need to. We'll explore more with constraints throughout the book, and you've already hopefully realized that constraints are a fairly complex topic. Another way to do this, as it says, is to select the view controller in the document outline, then do an Editor, Resolve Auto Layout Issues, Add Missing Constraints. So we could have gone into the document outline and select the view selected the view right there and done the same thing. All right, it says normally the layout we've created here wouldn't require any modification, but this isn't always the case. For example, if you add more text fields below the two that we've already done until you reach the bottom of the view, and then have Xcode add constraints, you'll find that they would tie the whole column to the bottom of the view, not the top, which isn't what you want. So again, as mentioned, this is an art more than a science. It really is, and it takes some getting used to it. I'm still getting used to it. All right, I'm not too proud to say that I've got my own share of problems when I go through and do this stuff. So for our GUI, this isn't a problem. However, we can verify by using the preview assistant again. So they ask you to go in and run the preview assistant. All right, so again, that's View, Assistant Editor, Show Assistant Editor. Again, we don't have to do it that way, but that's a way of doing it. We could have also come over here to the Assistant Editor and then select Preview and Main Storyboard in the jump bar. Close a couple of these things we really don't need right now. Not sure why I didn't get it up, but we'll. It says when the preview for the 4-inch iPhone appears, add an extra one for a 5.5-inch, and you'll see that the layout remains the same. So we should be able to come in here and do this. That is how you bring up preview. That's how I do it. I click over here, go to preview, and main story, preview. It may be here and it may be behind this. I don't really know. But it doesn't look like it. It's as though my preview has been suppressed, but I don't know why. Again, sorry about this, but I've just got to go on here. All right, it says for this relatively simple example, Xcode is completely capable of creating constraints for you, but this is not always the case. Anytime you use editor, resolve, auto layout issues, add missing constraints, you should carefully check to make sure they're what you want them to be. Remember, if you've got constraints that have been added that you don't want, you can always remove them by highlighting the constraint and hitting delete. All right. Next here on page 109 is creating and connecting outlets. And the author says, we're almost ready to take the app for a test drive. For this part of the interface, all that's left is creating and connecting our outlets. The image view and labels do not need outlets. Now that's an important thing to realize. Again, what the author is saying is the image view right there, this label, and this label, they're passive controls. They're not going to be moving, leaving, or doing anything while the program's running. So there really and truly is no reason for us to come in and make them and connect any outlets to them. All right. All right. As you remember from the previous chapter, Xcode allows us to create and connect outlets at the same time using the Assistant Editor, which should already be open, but I closed it, so I'll reopen it. It says make sure your storyboard file is selected. If you don't have a huge amount of real estate, you might also want to hide your utilities and your project navigator and whatever else needs to be hidden. All right. So this is the picture that you're going to see in just a second. So all I have to do is come up here and add the and add the assistant editor. I really don't need the document outline, I don't believe, right this second, so I'll do that. So I've got a little bit more real estate, as they say. Okay? All right. So that looks pretty much the way that it looks here in Figure 415 on page 110. So the author says, now comes the fun part. Fun's a relative term, but we're going to go through the code, that the stuff he has there anyway. Again, while I'm doing this, I have this both in on the MacBook Pro that you see that you're watching this tape from, and I have it on the Intel machine so I can go back and forth. All right, it says control drag from the top text field over to the view, and we'll see this come up. So again, control, click from here, drag that up, let go. You know the routine, we've done this before. Release the mouse button. Okay, we want to create an outlet named name field right here. And I'm not sure, but I want to make sure that I didn't just choose the view instead of just the name itself. So I'm going to cancel this. Now maybe I will bring back up my document outline, because I can always choose the right thing based on the document outline. I think we all know this here, but just in case. All right, so I can come down here and I can choose the name. So, oops, type in a name. There we go. All right. Now it says UI text field. Previously it said UI view. So name field. We want to put that in there. And hit enter or click connect, either way. And you can see that it's been added right there. All right. It says you now have a property called name field in the view controller. It has been connected to the top text field. Do this for the second one also, and make sure that it's called number field. All right, so with that one, I'm going to again do a control drag, and I'll put it right, not exactly where I wanted to put it, but hopefully it's in the right place. It is not. So I'll move it. All right, so there are my two fields, my name field and my number field. All right, says let's see how our app works, shall we? Select product, run. Your app should come up in the simulator. Click on the name field and you should get a traditional keyboard. Type in a name and tap the number field, and the number keypad should come up, as shown in Figure 417. So we've just done this. When we click name, the regular keyboard comes up, and when we click number, then this keyboard here should come up. So let's do a file save. Always a good time to save. And we'll run this. And the author is, sometimes authors, programmers, etc. has his own unique little sense of humor here, because he says, there's a little problem here. How do you get the keyboard to go away? And the author says, go ahead and try. We'll wait here while you do. So I'm waiting for this to come back up. Sometimes I go and I literally click on the simulator, bring it up. Sometimes it makes it go faster, but especially considering this is fairly early in the morning, it's about 6:30. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to get going, but I will do this to bring it up here. The author also mentions on page 112, he says, if the keyboard doesn't show up in the simulator, select hardware keyboard, toggle software keyboard. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It wasn't yesterday when I tried to run this. Sometimes when I run this too for the first time, it loses its connection, so that's why I was checking that right there. Okay, hopefully it's going to come up now soon. Okay, there's more use. Well, it should have been user, but that's okay. I guess this probably doesn't have that much space, but I bet you I called it the wrong name. I probably bet you I called it more use interface fun. So let's see if I've lost that connection. I have. See that? Lost connection to iPhone 6. So usually when I come in here and I quit the simulator, close that, and run the simulator again, it usually reestablishes that connection. Again, I'm not sure why I lose that, but I do. Okay. So when we look here, well, as you can see, this is way too big, so I'm going to have to change that. Not too much appears to be happening here, so let me go and close. Oh, there's my there's my name. That looks a little hosed up, so I'm gonna go and really cut that size of this thing down. So give me a second here. Again, I had problems with this yesterday. I wanted to go in here and go into editor, size to fit content. That's what I wanted to do yesterday, and it wouldn't let me. So this is going to look really hosed up now, probably. Notice I get this, so I might be able to come in here and try to resolve my issues. So let's see. No, I didn't want to do that. Notice when I said update frames, what happened. So I'm going to go back to editor, size to fit content. I wish that would have worked yesterday, and like I said, it did not, for whatever reason. Right? And I'm wondering if I do come down here and I go to align, and I try to tell it to horizontally align in container, if that will help or hurt. All right, we'll see. I know I've got the lines here. I understand that. So let me do a file, save, and let me try to run it again. Hopefully I made it better and not worse. Now, yesterday, again, when I tried to do this and get it to auto size, it wouldn't work. Hopefully you saw the tape yesterday, and it was grayed out. So I don't know. Maybe I should have tried harder. All right, I don't know why it would have worked today and it didn't work yesterday. I wish I did know that. It would make it much easier for what I'm doing right now. Yeah, so now as you notice, it looks really hosed up. Okay, that's okay. All right. It did attempt to size it as best it could, but I kind of screwed it up. So. Which has screwed up my numbers also. There's my number pad, and there's my, up here is my other pad. But now, what the author is saying is I've got one of these two pads that are up there all the time. So I can come in here and type in my name. I can come down here to the numeric one and type in a number, but they're basically stuck here. Okay? All right, what I'm going to do here, and maybe what I'm going to do here is a real mistake, but we're going to find out. Quit the simulator, and let's see, I'm trying to figure out a way that I could try to resolve these constraints. Because it looked as though when I did this and I said update frames, it sent it back to the size it was previously. It's not what I want. All right, so like I said, this is just all goofed up to heck. which is going to make it much harder when I try to put the other controls in and show you everything. But that's on me. I goofed up. Okay? Let's just go on. We'll do the best we can. Again, mine doesn't look perfect. As you already saw, you've already got a working one that looks and acts much better than the one that I showed you. All right. So, page 113. Because the keyboard is software-based and not a physical keyboard, as the author says, we need to do more. When the user taps the Done button on the text keyboard, a did end on exit event will be generated. So, as it says here, we want to select viewcontroller.swift and add the following action at the bottom of the file just before the closing curly. Try to make my life a little easier on myself, so I'm going to do a Command-C to copy. I don't know if I can copy from the book like this or not, if it matters. Why it would. Doesn't look like it does, so. All right. So what we just put in there, as you can see on the code right here, okay, down towards the bottom, and in your book on page 113, the author says, the first responder is the control with which the user is currently interacting. In other words, it's the control with a focus. In our new method, we tell the control to resign as a first responder, which gives up its focus. When the text field yields its first responsive status, the keyboard associated with it goes away. It says save the file that you just edited, hop back onto the storyboard, and trigger the action for both of them to make sure that indeed that happens. All right, so I'm going to go back and rerun this. Again, it's going to look funky because I've screwed up the image view here. And I just thought of a thing I can try to hopefully make that a little better, but we'll see in just a second. All right, what I'm more concerned with is running this and clicking here. Okay, so there's our first one. Click off. I guess we've got to go back. We've got to go down to the bottom here. Huh. I thought maybe I didn't put that button in. Let's try the other one. Huh. Thought we put in those done buttons, but let's go back and double check. Before we do that, I'm going to stop the simulator and I'm going to try something. As always, what I'm trying may be a total waste, but that's okay. Okay, now I've got the whole thing highlighted here, and I'm going to go back over to here, and I'm going to tell it to clear constraints. So that should clear every constraint that I have. Now I'm going to go back in and try to reset them again. Editor, resolve auto layout constraints, add missing constraints. So I tried to add them back in. Now, this looks really hosed up here. So I'm going to try to fix that. Close this. See if I can fix this. Wow. Not even sure how that happened, to be honest with you. Again, I'm going to come back in, click on the view, tell it to come in here and editor, resolve auto layout constraints, and I'm going to clear them from here so I have no constraints anymore. All right. So now with that highlighted, I'm going to come over here, bring up my It's funny because that's set up so that that should not be able to change width, but it did anyway. That's all the defaults there. Should be the same thing here. Well, you got another number pad. Capitalization, well, that was screwed up. That should be set to default. Number pad, return key, done. That's the way we wanted it to be. Auto enable, I thought we weren't supposed to do that, but we'll see in just a second. That's the one, the number one is all screwed up here. I'm clicking there, it's setting the color, which I don't want it to do. It's funny because it says here it's supposed to be a white color and it's not. Try this. Let's try this. Let's delete. Move that. And I'm going to move this. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. And I'm going to do an option drag down. Which made a copy, which is what I wanted. Alright, so that is still in there, and that should be name field. Type in a name. This right here should say type in a number. We'll come over to here. That number field that I had in here. Now remember, there's two things I have to do here. Okay. I come in here. That text, highlight that text field. Command. Sorry. Control. But I can't do that yet. I've got to remove this one, and I can't just remove that. And I'm trying to remember how to go in and remove it. Okay. Give me just a second here. There's a way to do this where if I click on one of these, it's supposed to show all of my connections, but I don't remember right now what that is. What I want to do is I want to remove this, but just removing that right there isn't going to be enough because technically it's still in the system, I believe. But notice there's nothing connected to it, so maybe I can just remove it. I'm going to try that. Come back over to here, Control, drag, go, and we're going to call that number field. If I get a message that it already exists rather, then there's going to be a problem. Okay, that looks okay as of right now. Alright, now at least it looks like it's okay, as far as I can tell. So I'm going to do a file, save, and now I'm going to try to come in and closer. Alright, so I'm going to do a file, save, alright, and then I'm going to do an editor resolve auto layout issues, add missing constraints. Now I either fixed it or I made it much worse than it was. Okay, we'll find out right now. So let's run it and see if I made it better or if I made it worse. Okay, there's name. Oh, I didn't change the type here to number keypad. So that's not too bad. It's looking better than it did. All right, let me stop the simulator here. Go back to number. That should say type in a number. It does. I should go to keyboard type here and change it to number pad. Now it's almost back looking, I believe, the way we want it to look. All right. So the author mentions on 114, using Interface Builder, we can change the class of the object that the view points to. All right, we need to add one more action to our controller class. Add the following method to your view controller Swift file right after the text done editing. So I'm going to go over to my, and I always do it this way, I don't know why, but it's just something I started doing and keep doing. All right, so my view controller Swift file. All right, so right under my text done editing, the author wants us to put in I think that's everything, and I think that's correct. As mentioned on the bottom then of page 114, this method simply tells both text fields to yield their first responder status if they have it. It's perfectly fine to call this on a control that is not the first responder, so in other words, to call it on a field that doesn't have the focus, so we can call it on both without needing to check which one needs it. Save the file, select the storyboard again, make sure your document outline is expanded. So let's go back to the storyboard. In fact, this would be a great, as always, another good time to save. All right, it says make sure the document storyboard is showing, but we don't need the navigator right now, so there we go. And then single click view so it is selected. All right, now we want to bring up the identity inspector, which is over here. Okay. It says this is where you can change the underlying class of any object instance in your keyboard. So what is shown on the screen over here is what you see in figure 418 on the bottom of page 114. It says the field named class should currently say UI view, which it does. If not, you likely don't have the container selected. Now change that setting to UI control and press return to commit the change. All controls that are capable of triggering action methods are subclasses of UI control. By changing the underlying class, you've just given this view the ability to trigger action methods. All right, it says now we should bring up the connections inspector. And the author says if you do that, what we should see over here on the side are all the events that we saw when we were connecting buttons in the previous chapter. Okay? It says now drag from the touchdown event to the view controller. So we've got to find touchdown event right there. Hold down on control and drag over to our view controller. Now touches anywhere in the view without an active control will trigger our new action method, which will cause the keyboard to retract. Okay? Connecting to the view controller like this is the same way as connecting to a method in code. The author says on the bottom of page 115, you might be wondering why we selected touch down instead of touch up inside. The answer is that the background isn't a button. It's not in control of the eyes of the user, so it wouldn't occur to most users to simply drag their fingers somewhere else to cancel the action. All right, so save the storyboard again, save the project again, and run the application. It says this time the keyboard should disappear not only when the done button is tapped, but when you tap anywhere that's not an active control. So it should be any place that's in here. All right, any place that's in here that is not on where an active control is. Thought I started running this, but maybe I did, maybe I didn't. As always, this is going a lot slower than I'd hoped it would. Sorry about that. So if I don't finish it before students start coming in, because it's just about 7, I will finish it at home tonight and try to actually put it out there tonight also. Okay, I'd like to at least get the adding the label and the slider part in here. If I can get that far, I'd be in the middle of page 120, which wouldn't be too bad. Right now I'm on page 116. Why didn't it take my run? There we go. Okay. Okay, there's everything. There's number, there's our number keyboard, and it didn't go away. Okay, there's our name keyboard, and again, it didn't go away. Wow. So, as always, I'll have to check on that and see why. Not sure why. I thought I followed every step that they had in here. Let me stop with the tape right now and start up a new one in just a couple minutes.